Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. It is so nice to see people in this room. You cannot imagine. We're growing every single week, and thank you so much for being here. We are also live streaming. My name's Jane Scott, and I'm president and CEO of the Columbus Metropolitan Club. And truly, it is nice to see folks in the room. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll also be live streaming today. So some of you who have not been here since we've been doing the live stream, or maybe some of you, this is your very first time at the Metropolitan Club, our cadence is just a tiny bit different. Right at noon, we'll be going live through Columbus Metropolitan Club's live stream on YouTube, as well as the Columbus Dispatch live streams us as well. So Carol Nucamaluto, our chair, will come up and she'll do the standard announcements and introductions and so forth like she typically would for a forum. So just for the fun of it, though, a quick survey. How many people have had one shot? How many people have had both shots? There you go. So we have the overachievers or the achievers in here, and I love it, which also is going to help us come back at the Metropolitan Club faster. So thank you so much. Just a couple of reminders. We know that you can't eat your lunch and wear your mask, but we would ask you please to try to put your mask on after you've had your meal, just as a courtesy to those around you, as well as the camera pans, the audience, and we want to make sure we're setting a good example for anyone who might be watching the show. Telephones, your cell phones, we have learned through the live stream experience that they ring really, really loud on the television. So if you wouldn't mind making sure that they're silenced, that would be great. Feel free to take pictures, go on Facebook, social media, Instagram, whatever you all do to share the fact that you are at the Columbus Metropolitan Club and enjoying a great lunch with a lot of your friends. We really do need you to tell folks that the Metropolitan Club is open, it feels safe, and encourage others to come back for our forums on Wednesday. So thank you so much for being here. And as I said, Carol will be back up here in a few minutes, right at noon to kick things off. You probably will be served by then, but even if you're not, feel free to go ahead and enjoy your lunch while this show goes on. And again, thanks. We really, really appreciate you being here.
I already did. Oh, you did. I'm sorry. Did I? I did. I did. Yeah, I did. I told her to sit in the back so if she tried to throw a roll, it wouldn't hit me. Yeah, she's here. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. I'm Carol Newcomb-Aludo. They now call me Chair Emeritus because I've been around for so long, of the CMC Board of Trustees. I want to welcome our in-person audience today. It's nice to see all of you, and to say hello to those of you who are tuning in to the live stream. Hello, live stream people, and welcome. Conversation moves us forward, and members power our conversation. We'd like to invite you to join CMC. Membership is very affordable and a great investment in yourself professionally and, of course, in the community. I want to put a little mention in here for lifetime membership, too. It's even easier. You don't have to remember to renew, so think about lifetime membership. Metro Club live streaming is presented by the Emergency Response Fund of the Columbus Foundation in partnership with the Columbus Dispatch and PNC. Thank you very much. We'd also like to thank those of you who purchased a virtual seat for today's forum. We're grateful for your support and have been grateful for your support during this past tough year. You can learn more about CMC, register for events, join or renew your membership, purchase a virtual seat, or make a donation anytime, of course, at columbusmetroclub.org. Today's forum, SWACO's Big Step Towards a Sustainable Future, is sponsored by Kroger, Corna-Crocosing, Fahlgren Mortine, and the City of Hilliard. Won't you help me thank them? Each year, Franklin County residents and businesses send over 1 million tons of materials to the Franklin County landfill. Even though our 50% recycling rate exceeds the national average, nearly 3/4 of the materials that end up in the landfill could have been recycled or composted. And nearly 1 million pounds of food waste arrives at the landfill every day. How is refuse collection, recycling, and composting evolving, and what opportunities exist to do better? Let's welcome our experts to learn more. Please welcome Executive Director of the Solid Waste Authority of Central Ohio, Ty Marsh. CEO of Advanced Drainage Systems, Scott Barber. City Manager for the City of Hilliard, Michelle Crandall. And our host, Science and Environmental Reporter for the Columbus Dispatch, Beth Berger. Ty will start things off with an overview of SWACO's sustainability report, and then Beth will lead the conversation. Ty, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Carol. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today. At SWACO, our mission is to manage the community's solid waste stream, to enable growth in our community, to enable prosperity, and to enable environmental stewardship. The long-term challenge that we face is actually the population growth that's occurring in our region and specifically in Franklin County. If you take MORPS's figures of 1 million new people by the year 2050 in our region, extrapolate that to Franklin County, which is the area we serve, we estimate that that is going to generate an additional 600,000 tons of waste per year. 600,000 tons of waste per year. So our challenge is how are we going to manage that? But within that challenge is the real opportunity. How in managing that waste stream can we become a more sustainable community? How can we recycle more? How can we do all these things to help the environment while at the same time creating economic benefit for these endeavors? Today we're releasing our annual Community Impact Report, which for those of you who are here is on your chair. For those of you at home or elsewhere, it's at swaco.org. It's a very extensive report. We're doing a lot, and there's just a few of these points that I want to highlight to you today. First, in the recycling issue itself, as Carol mentioned, our recycling rate, and we use the term diversion, which means that it's diverted from the landfill. Our recycling rate is 50%. That's one of the highest in the Midwest. Something to be proud of. We've gone from 32% diversion to 50% over the past 7 to 8 years. But we want to go a lot higher. We want to take it to 75% diversion by the year 2032. And we've got a strategy and a roadmap on how to do that, and some of that is contained in our annual report. We want to focus on those areas, those materials that are going into landfill that are being generated that could be diverted. And that's why we have a big initiative on food waste. Food waste is 15% of the total amount that's going into landfill today. So through education, through a composting initiative that we're working with to try to find a partner with, we've got a lot of areas going on in our food waste initiative. We're also focused now, we're going to be focusing on multifamily dwellings. Currently, in single-family households in Franklin County, 98% of all single-family households have curbside recycling. That's a phenomenal statistic. It's something to be very, very proud of, and is not happening in many communities throughout the United States. We not only have 98%, but we have now, through a program with SWACO, been providing 50 cents on the dollar so that communities can buy a 64-gallon container rather than just the small cartons. And in the past couple of years, we've had 38,000 households take advantage of that. This next year, in partnership with the City of Columbus, we're going to start a pilot program for multifamily dwellings, apartments, because that's the next area that we really need to tackle in terms of recycling opportunities. And with us and the Recycling Partnership in the City of Columbus, this is going to be an exciting undertaking that we look forward to reporting on in the future. We also have new emerging relationships with the Ohio Hospital Association so that all of our hospitals in Central Ohio are going to be amping up their recycling. And keep in mind that they are major generators of food in our region, so it ties into a lot of our other initiatives as well. We also have initiatives with the state of Ohio. They're going to be instituting recycling in the roads and Rife Towers. And so we're glad to be that resource for our community to increase the amount of recycling. In our annual report to you, I also want to highlight our carbon emissions reduction initiative. We have a goal to reduce our carbon emissions by 64% by the year 2030. The landfill is one of the largest creators of methane gas. It is a major source of climate change problems. I want to emphasize to everyone that if you really want to have an impact on climate change and all that, the best thing you can do is recycle. Because the more that you recycle, the less that goes in the landfill and the less methane gas is created. Now, fortunately for SWACO at our landfill, we capture most of that gas. We turn it over to a public-private partner. They clean that gas, so rather than flaring it on site, it's cleaned, it's put in the Columbia Gas Pipeline, and it's sold as a renewable energy source to local companies. So for SWACO, we're not only producing cleaner air as a result of this partnership, we're providing an alternative fuel for our businesses, as well as we're making money off that. And the money that we make offsets the tipping fee that businesses and residents have to pay to dispose of their waste. That same principle is what we're using on the solar energy park field that we're building at the old closed landfill, model landfill where Phoenix Golf Course used to be. Under that, we've got a partnership to build a 180-acre solar energy farm. It's going to generate 50 megawatts of energy, which would be enough to provide energy for 5,000 homes in our region. We're very excited by this because it will not only will generate some revenue for us, but also renewable energy. It's also right along Interstate 71, and so this is going to be a billboard, if you will, for sustainability in our community. And you just think when you're driving up 71 and you see our beautiful skyline, on your right you're going to see a 180-acre solar energy field, which makes a tremendously positive statement about our community and our community's commitment to sustainability. The other point that I want to touch on that we elaborate in the report is our economic development initiative. We have a guiding principle of SWACO that we want to leverage the waste stream for economic benefit. Currently today, there are nearly 400 companies in Central Ohio that are in the recycling business or use recycling materials for their process. And you're going to hear from Scott on advanced drainage, just an amazing story. Those 400 companies have 5,000 employees. It's an economic impact of $2 billion in our region. Recycling is a major industry, so that when you're recycling, you're not only helping improve the environment, you're supporting local jobs in the process. But at SWACO, we want to do more than just help those local companies. We want to capture that entrepreneurship spirit, and we want to get a lot of startups going on in the waste and recycling industry. So we partnered with Rev1 to help us initially with food waste startups that then will be extrapolated to all recycling and waste industries to use their acumen, their business connections, their resources to help us identify those companies so that we can create startups. And then we've got the other area that we want to do, which is attract companies, attract those businesses, attract those investments to our region that are investing in this type of recycling and processing to take recycled materials and convert them into a product of higher value. That's why we're creating the Green Energy Business Park in Grove City on our 350-acre site. And by the way, the mayor of Grove City is here today, and we appreciate his partnership. We're also partnering not only with Grove City, but with Jobs Ohio and Rev1 and One Columbus to attract those kind of companies here. We're going to have a sorting facility on site that can sort the materials so that the companies can right there use that materials to convert them into a higher product. Now you may be thinking, well, that sounds great, but that's kind of light years away. The point I really want to emphasize is those investments, those business decisions are happening right now. And we have the opportunity to capture those businesses and that investment. Let me give you a couple examples. Procter & Gamble has set a corporate sustainability goal that by the year 2030, all of their products will be packaged in containers made with recycled material. So thus your Tide detergent, that's going to be made with recycled plastics. Where are they going to get those materials? Where are those containers going to be manufactured and made? There's an investment in Southern Ohio, a $350 million investment creating 51 jobs to service that needs. These investments are happening now. We want to attract those investments here on our Green Energy Park in Grove City, but also throughout the region. Another example is that Mattel Toy Company just announced 2 weeks ago that they are going to be starting to make all their toys, Ken and Barbie dolls and everything else, with recycled materials. And so therefore, they're going to be encouraging everybody to recycle your Ken and Barbie doll and everything else. That's great. Where are those materials going to be recycled? How are those molds going to be made, and how are the new materials going to be manufactured? we want to attract those companies here. In fact, in Obetz, there's a company that's going to be, it's making their investments now to take these what's called hard plastics that currently aren't recycled in our region. If you have a hard plastic, let's stay with the Ken and Barbie example, that goes into the landfill because there's no market for it. You can't do anything with it. This company is going to take that plastic into a chemical process, break it down into its core elements, resell it so that you can make new plastic materials. Those are the opportunities we're talking about. And let's not forget that when Amazon selected Columbus as one of its 20 finalists, one of the questions that Amazon asked our regional economic development folks, what is your commitment to sustainability? What is your recycling rate? Because that is a corporate cultural goal for Amazon, and that is a workforce attraction initiative. We gave a very good report on that, but this is the investment that's happening. This is what's going on. So for us, our economic development strategy is not just making the economic investments and the jobs that are created, but it's also, in so doing, helping the environment and creating more environmental sustainability, which is what we're all about. So thank you.
Thanks for that overview, Ty. We know that more waste going into the landfill leads to more methane emissions as materials break down. And methane is one of the most potent greenhouse gases. It absorbs heat 80 times more readily than carbon dioxide, which contributes to global warming. According to US EPA data, our landfill emitted more than 171,000 metric tons, and that's even with programs in place to use that methane gas. If emissions aren't lowered, Ohio temps are expected to rise 4 to 6 degrees by mid-century. That means summers will resemble those of Arkansas. So that means we have a lot of work to do. In terms of waste, as a community, we send 1 million pounds of food to the landfill daily. And it's my understanding, Michelle, that Hilliard has a program for food waste collection. Do you want to tell us how that's going?
Sure, thank you very much. Great question. Yes, we have a compost drop-off program. And thanks to a grant from SWACO, we were able to put that in place. It's only been in place about 4 months now. But essentially, it's anyone that's a resident can pick up a free bucket from us if they want or use their own. And then it's specifically food waste that they can place in that bucket, drop it off at the drop-off site. We collect those. Right now, we're at about 2,000 pounds a month. We want that to rise significantly over the next few weeks or few months and see that number go up.
What challenges do cities face in moving towards sustainability? And you think about food waste. We have some outlying cities like Hilliard that have the food waste program in place, but what else?
I think some of the challenges, well, I'll say some of the roles of the city in facing some of these challenges is education and information is a significant role that local governments play, and really helping our residents understand why you want to recycle, how to recycle, and we need to play a bigger role than we have recently with our schools. We know if the kids are educated about recycling, they're going to go home and the parents are going to have to recycle. So parent shaming is a good thing when it comes to recycling habits for sure. And then, convenience. So, Ty talked about some of the things that have to happen for some of the waste stream to be more convenient to recycle. So when it comes to composting, for example, we have a drop-off site. You have to really want to compost to bring it to that drop-off site. If we could do composting at the curb, then many more people would compost. But you need the facilities to be able to process that and advances in technology to make that process happen more quickly and more efficiently. Those are just a couple of the challenges and roles that local government plays.
Ty, even if we had curbside food waste disposal, would we be able to handle that right now?
We wouldn't be able to handle it on a large scale. That really gets into what we call the recycling infrastructure issue. We have to have a composting facility to be able to handle that volume. The volume right now that they're doing in Hilliard, and actually there are 7 other communities that have this drop-off program. The volume is low enough that it can be handled, but on a bigger scale, when we get the hospitals involved, when we get the schools and universities involved, we're going to have a larger composting operation. So we're doing our due diligence and studying that now. We're seeking a public-private partner. We'll be issuing an RFQ and then an RFP process, we think, later this year. But we've got to have that in place to be able to do it at a large scale. But in the meantime, on the smaller scale, that's where the education portion comes in. That's where people can see the examples of how easy it is to do, how safe it is, how it's really a good thing.
We've mentioned a lot of the environmental benefits to diverting waste, but there's also some economic benefits, and wanted to check in with Scott down there, who's brought some wonderful props for us today, and see if you could tell us a little bit about your business and how you divert plastics from the landfill.
I'd be happy to, and thank you for having us today. It's a very interesting topic to us at Advanced Drainage. It's really what we do. We manage stormwater. It rains, something has to be done with that water off of properties. So we manage a precious resource. We do that with a very high content of recycled material. I did bring props. We'll buy roughly 5 million pounds from SWACO each year of plastic milk jugs, detergent bottles that I will compete for those Tide bottles, shampoo bottles. We go through an elaborate process of cleaning them and sorting them, and we shred them, and millions of pounds a day into some form like that. We turn them into pellets, we blend them. There's a lot of material science behind it. And then we get it to just the right recipe, and then we turn it into corrugated plastic. This is high-density polyethylene pipe. It has our famous green stripe on it, which some people here from an agriculture background might see. We do this across the country. We have 48 plants. We are part of that supply chain that Ty was talking about, that infrastructure, which is, frankly, more complicated than one would think. We do this at scale every day. And you asked about the economics of that. We invest money in machinery, equipment, people, automation. We invest a lot in logistics and transportation and procurement of these materials. So there's, we got four or five plants kind of doing this type of activity, probably a couple hundred employees, just that. Another 2,000 making this. But it's also done in a way that depending upon market conditions, is economically advantageous versus buying virgin material, from a prime producer, particularly in the Gulf Coast. So we're highly incentivized in our business model to be able to procure this material, to divert this material from a landfill like SWACO, invest in machinery, equipment, people, transportation to do this, so I can make my finished products, high quality, on time finished products. And as we think about this, in some of the things that make it hard, is really at the very top of that list, and a very big economic driver is the availability of the supply. So the more that we can recycle and divert and not go in the landfill and make it accessible to us to buy, that really helps a lot. And as we add materials to that, like the polypropylene, which is another material we use, or we add multifamily to that, it really kind of lifts the overall level of water and gets easier to row in the market. Statewide, kind of region-wide, we're probably buying 20 million pounds, inclusive of the 5 we're buying from through Ty's infrastructure. So we're, that's not an insignificant amount, but it could probably be 30 or 40, pretty easily. We could consume that pretty easily if we could get it diverted out. So those are some of the challenges.
if you had to pick which reason why you decided to go with recycled plastic, I mean, was it an economic driving factor, or was it the fact that you want to be sustainable? I mean, what barriers?
What a loaded question that is.
What-
We've been doing this, at scale for, let's call it 15 years. And we've grown that at a double-digit clip over those 15 years. I think we initially did it, Beth, for economic reasons and continuity of supply reasons. When they have a winter apocalypse in Texas, in the Gulf Coast, and all those petrochemical facilities go down, that hurts me and my ability to get material, so I kind of pivot to the recycled material. And this has happened during hurricanes and all kinds of other stuff. I would tell you increasingly over the last several years, as we've done sustainability reports, as we've looked at policy making for our customers, that it's become more what I would call our repositioning of the company. Because we really have a nice hand dealt, to tell you the truth. We deal with a precious resource, water, that is highly important and visible and adds to quality of life. And we do it with this high content. 60% of our products use recycled materials. I think it's kind of obvious for us to pivot to that sustainability piece. But being the commercial guy up here, yes, economics, remain important on, any type you're dealing with your input costs, they're important.
So this is a question for all of you, but how can we remove barriers and encourage businesses to be more sustainable? How can we help take this waste stream and pivot that into the supply chain?
I think, Ty mentioned the importance of technology advancements, and another role that local government should be playing in Central Ohio is how do we build that business environment where startups can want to come here and develop and prototype and commercialize technology advancements. Back to what Scott said about there is a barrier to entry for a lot of companies of the cost of recyclables. So how do we improve the technology, and how do we become a region that's known for startup companies that are focused on the waste stream and diverting more and more from the landfills?
I would just add to that I think the business will make a business decision in terms of what processes they want to use, and included in that decision may be a goal of sustainability, or it may not, but it's going to be a business decision. And I think what we in the governmental sector have to do is make sure that we are enabling that and helping that and providing that support in a way that enables those businesses to do well. We did a public opinion poll. We do these occasionally just to better understand our messages for getting people to recycle. And everybody knows that recycling is good for the environment. That's a no-brainer. What people are intrigued by is the economic implications of that. And if you can tie it to jobs and investment, then that resonates with folks who may not be recycling right now. So those are part of our education efforts, but the more materials that we can get, the more that it supports a company like Advanced Drainage. And Scott's being modest. They're one of the largest users of recycled materials in the United States, right here in our region, right here in Hilliard. And that's really something to be proud of, but it's a little bit of like, well, who knew that? That's what's happening out there in business decisions. That's what's happening where the opportunities are. And again, that's where we're trying as a community to let's recycle more, because there's much, it really helps the environment, but there's a lot of economic opportunity to it as well.
Ty, I know we have a really great recycling rate right now. We're around 50%, but it's my understanding SWACO wants to go to what, 72%?
75.
75% by,
Yeah.
is it 2032?
2032.
Okay, so how do we get there, and what are the biggest obstacles that are holding us back?
When we look at trying to get to 75% or any recycling, I mean, there's four categories we really focus on. One is education. You have to educate the folks. You have to provide education materials so that people know the right way to recycle, the right things, how they do it. That's our whole Recycle Right initiative. A second is really public policy. The public policy set by a local government, a state government, a federal government has an impact on this. And so we have a public policy agenda. We're actually working right now to develop some model ordinances for local government so that if you're building houses or you're building apartments and you want to have recycling in them, we're providing model ordinances so they don't have to do all that research. So public policy plays an important role. The third we touched on was just infrastructure, recycling infrastructure. Again, we're looking not only at composting as a major infrastructure, but we're looking at a materials recovery facility, which is a sorting facility of your curbside recycling. Because getting that materials and being able to sort it and having that type of infrastructure, at your curbside to have a 64-gallon container versus just a carton, those are important ingredients. And then the fourth that plays into that is markets. You got to remember that recycling is a commodities business. It's a global commodities business. And you can take all this material out that you want, but if you don't have a market to buy, if you don't have a buyer for that material, then it's very expensive garbage because it ends up at the landfill. So helping create markets, helping bring markets here, that's what Scott's talking about. He needs that material. Ohio is fortunate. We have a new paper plant up in Wapakoneta, Pratt Industries. They will take every piece of recycled cardboard that they can get. There is such a demand for that fiber. So our job is we know there's a market for that. Our job is how do we educate people to recycle cardboard the right way? How do we have public policies that encourage that and not prevent it? How do we have infrastructure that we can get that out of the stream and get it to the plant in Wapakoneta or get the material to Scott Advanced Drainage? That's where it all comes together, and so that's simple, but it's complex, but it's those multifaceted elements that we look at in terms of developing our strategy to get to 75%. 75% is a stretch goal. Let's be clear on that, but it's a doable goal. We have already proven that as a community. If we're at 50% now, we can get to 75%, but it ain't going to be easy, and it's going to take commitment. It's going to take all those elements.
How do you, you mentioned education's a huge piece. How do you win hearts and minds? It's so easy for people to just toss things in the trash and, out of sight, out of mind.
Well, you have to have clever campaigns, and that's why Neil Walgreen's one of our important partners on that to help us with that. But you've got to get messages across. But we have other tricks. We have tours of the landfill pre-COVID, but we take 4,000 school kids on tours of landfill. The programs that we have in our schools, and Hilliard is such an excellent example of this in terms of recycling and composting and everything else. If you get the kids to do this, the parents will follow. We see that day in and day out. So there's an element of that, but it's no single bullet. It's no silver bullet. It's a lot of different strategies that we have to test, readjust, and keep working on.
In Hilliard, we rely heavily on SWACO to help us with communication and information to our residents. We also have an environmental sustainability commission that's resident-led, appointed by our city council, and part of their focus is education to the public. Doing recycling events, drop-off sites for things that people wouldn't normally be able to put at the curb. So their efforts have been significant, and our president of council is here, Pete Marsh, Ty's brother, maybe, I don't and he was actually one of the original founders of that group. So they continue to look at new ways to educate the public, interesting new programs. Mentioned the compost drop-off. We also have just purchased, again through a SWACO grant, a styrofoam densifier. So if you think about any time around the holidays and all the styrofoam that you accumulate, I just redid my small bath, and a corner of my garage now is nothing but styrofoam. The Environmental Sustainability Commission has done collections over the past 6 years, and we've had to drive all that to Knox County. And have it processed somewhere. So now we have that. going to make it available to any other community that wants it. But that's another opportunity to get people there. People know styrofoam is terrible for the environment, and they don't want to throw it in the trash. So, if you can get them to an event like that, then you have an opportunity to educate them on other things around the environment.
Well, we're about to move to questions from our in-person and live stream audience in just a few minutes. But one last question, I mean, like, where do we go from here? I mean, SWACO has lots of initiatives going right now. I think one of the biggest things that's in our city that is a challenge is the fact that apartment complexes don't have recycling. And if you could talk to us a little bit about how that pilot is shaping up.
The pilot is really driven by the city of Columbus because, as you know, they're an example of they provide curbside recycling to everyone without an additional fee. Some communities charge fees and don't. So therefore, they've got a commitment to want to get recycling in apartment dwellings. Part of the challenge here is owners of apartment complexes don't want recycling in there. They don't want the additional trucks. They don't want the additional containers. So it's not just logistics, it's ownership issues. It's another is when we talk about multifamily, you're talking about a large variety of multifamily. Townhouses with outside entrances, 5 or 6 story where you come off an elevator. There's a lot of variety, and so what this approach is start with 10,000 units and 20,000 units on a variety of types of multifamily dwellings, and then test and see what's working and what isn't, that then we could scale up on a larger scale. This initiative, like so many, is being disrupted by COVID. In fact, just getting the supplies to do some of this on the pilot has been delayed. We can't even get those things. But that will, once that gets going, that'll be combined with a very significant and targeted education campaign. So it's kind of a blitz, but it's going to start in the city of Columbus. It'll be about 10,000 to 20,000 units. Now, these are purposefully targeted units. We'll see how it goes.
Well, it's the Columbus Metropolitan Club's tradition to take audience questions. Jane Scott of the Columbus Metropolitan Club is curating questions from the live stream audience and for our live audience. So please keep your questions brief and to the point.
Oh, thank you. Good afternoon, Bill Wayhoff of Steptoe and Johnson PLC. Scott, I was curious whether or not the fractionation plants and producing plastic pellets, down on the Ohio River and whatnot, is that the type of plastic that's useful to ADS?
Are you talking about the plant in Ironton, or you?
Yeah, there's a Shell plant actually.
Okay.
I hate to say in
No,
Pennsylvania.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the classic, the plant that's being built in western PA on the Ohio River, the one that's contemplated south of there, are the classic virgin resin sources we would have. Today, the majority of those are in the Gulf Coast. That one with access to shale up here in the Midwest would be a ready source of us. And the best advertisement that plant has is the winter storm in Texas in February right now. So we would put ourselves in the category of very anxious for that to get going next year.
Thank you.
Well, we do have a lot of questions from our online audience, so I'll try to get to them as fast as possible. And anyone who has a question, just come up here and we'll go every other one. So Allison Barrett has a question for you, Ty. There used to be a waste not center. Old goods went to educators, artists, and nonprofits. Any plan for SWACO or other entities to revive that model in the future?
I'm vaguely familiar with it, and there was an issue with it as to why it shut down. We have a grant program, waste reduction grant program, that we welcome all kinds of good ideas. And so if that has a good idea and a merit, we'd encourage someone to apply for a grant, and we would support that. Our grant program, for example, I mean, there's some incredible ideas going on out there that we have provided grants from, and that's part of why we have the partnership with Rev 1 on the startups. For example, there's a bicycle shop in Franklinton that rebuilds bicycles exclusively with recycled parts. Isn't that incredible? What a wonderful story about our community, and it's a business. We also funded a grant for Franklinton Farms because they're doing composting to provide a local garden, and they needed a piece of equipment to help them with that composting. So on the arts initiative, I recall that's not been around, but on that or any other, we strongly encourage grant requests. Come in and talk to us, my goodness, because that type of spirit, an entrepreneurship spirit, is really a critical core component of our goal and our work plan.
Good discussion. Appreciate the opportunity. Ike Stage, Mayor of City of Grove City. Has nothing to do with the landfill. 2 words, plastic bags. I mean, you talked about public policy, and we had the General Assembly who has absolutely turned their back on plastic bags, except to say, just keep on using them. How do we come to grips with that situation?
I think that's a perfect example where you have to get the policies lined up, because there are ready uses for those plastic bags. I mean, those can be recycled. You know, there are people in the building materials industry that are using those, and they're actually standing up their own gathering mechanisms for that, part of that infrastructure that Ty talks about. You know, and we're a big recycler, and we can't do it without those kinds of infrastructures. If you really want to know what moves the needle in this thing, it's to get that gathering, sorting, and logistics back out into the market, you know, from Ty to me. That's what makes these things really run hard. So you need policy that drives that kind of infrastructure.
If I could add to that, right before the General Assembly did that, we had convened a group of different businesses, active participants, Kroger, because Amy McCormick's here, Giant Eagle, CVS, a lot of these companies, and we were working collectively and started the Bring Me Back campaign for plastic bags. In fact, at Kroger's and most stores, they've got a place to drop that now. So this is a situation that we were working on locally that we felt we had a solution, but it was superseded by the State General Assembly. The other thing I would add is this facility that I talked about going into OBETs, one of the things that they'll be able to do is take that, plastic bags are called film, dry cleaning bags, all that. They'll be able to take that and through a chemical process break them down and reuse them. So we still have some good opportunities to recycle those materials.
Ty, you talked about an infrastructure need for sorting. In Europe, I know in Germany, the customer sorts it, and there's a reward for sorting all of your things. You've got a brown bin, a green bin, a blue bin, and you pay by the pound for your trash to be taken away, but you don't pay anything for the recycling. Is that the kind of policy that could ever happen in Ohio or in Columbus?
I think it's a challenge anytime you start talking about European models, because in Europe the charge for a tipping fee, what it costs to dispose, is so high that the economics work for those kind of investments. We're trying different things here, and Whitehall is a leading example. Whitehall is instituting now I forget what the term is, but your garbage containers, you are paying by the size of the container. And the smaller the container for your garbage, your trash, the less you pay, which in turn encourages you to do more recycling, which you don't pay any more for. So it's called a volume-based effort. So I think what we're trying is we got to try those kind of approaches, because a wholesale change isn't going to occur, and even it may want to happen at a local level, the state may intercede in that.
Thank you for this program. I'm Cynthia Vermillion with Hilliard City Council, here to support our wonderful city manager. I have a three-pronged question. What kinds of chemicals are being used to convert the plastic materials, and what are the environmental impacts of those chemicals? And what about the harmful toxins in these plastics already? And then how can we cut plastics manufacturing to begin with? Thank you.
So to do this, what we do, you use water. There's no additional chemical processes. We have to clean the material. We cool it as we make pipe. So there's no additional chemical added to the whole thing. And this particular material is inert. So it's chemically inert. So when you put it in the ground and it's there for 100 years, it doesn't break down and kind of leach back into the thing. It's the nature of high-density polyethylene. Not all plastics are that way, but the ones that we use are. So we feel that that these products are highly sustainable because we take it out of the stream for 100 years. We do this, we make it into this, it goes into the ground chemically inert for 100 years. I mean, that's kind of, what we test to the standard now. A piece of property might be redeveloped and it pulled out. By the way, we'll recycle that. We'll buy that from the people and recycle that. So I don't see, I think we're kind of on the right end of your question. How you overall reduce plastics, I think that, the way we're attacking that is to decrease the overall use of virgin plastics or plastics that, kind of are through their first cycle through the manufacturing. And you'll probably never be able to get to zero on that because you'll need some properties of that structurally need some properties of that. But we work in our designs to minimize that, reduce that, enhance our material science so that we can minimize that. So that would be my answer. Was that three answers to your three questions? Okay, good.
So I'm going to combine a couple questions here. Jill Levy asks, can I recycle this? Is a book that tells what is and what isn't recyclable as well. It gives the reader understanding of the recyclables that can be upcycled. Do you have a pamphlet that lets Columbus residents know that type of information? And Steve Swift has a similar question. How much of a bottleneck to the process is the receipt of non-recyclable materials causing toward the proper processing of the correct and compliant recycled materials?
So can I answer that? Because as great a job as they do at sorting, there are still materials that come through that you don't want in there. The easiest example is the label, the paper label on a plastic bottle that we might get or something like that. So we invest in technologies, sorting, cleaning, all that to kind of strip out those impurities. But it can be a big deal because the cleaner stream I get, kind of the better throughput I get of my assets. So that is something that we talk a lot about, is how you get that clean stream, out of the MRF for, post separation. And a lot of technology going into that and some of the investments that you've been making and that there are others that are accelerating those investments with grants and whatnot.
Go to recycleright.org or go to SWACO.org. And we've worked very hard to make that a fully informational reference tool for what's recycled, the best way to recycle, where can you recycle, all that information, recycleright.org. The other, I would say that what the question also touches on is the issue of what's called contamination in your recycling. What goes into that blue bin, for example, if you have a blue bin for recycling, it's important that you're putting the right things in there, because if you're putting a lot of stuff that can't be recycled, that therefore becomes very expensive garbage because it's been processed, and then it ends up at the landfill. And you as residents or businesses are paying for that because that's part of the fees that the processor and the hauler have to charge. So doing recycling the right way, lowering the contamination rate, which is one of our goals, that is so much an education process, and there's a lot of materials out there, but we encourage you to go to recycleright.org to get your answers.
Hello, I'm Deborah Price with Ice Miller, and I have a question that I never hear much reference to in this whole area, and that is, well, at my house, we don't have a lot of food waste. Feel pretty good about using all our food. But we do have a lot of pet waste. And with all the pet waste comes a plastic bag, which is wasted, or at least it's used, sometimes recycled. Is there any attention at all to alternatives to how most people get rid of their dog poop?
I didn't see that question coming, I have to tell you.
I don't have an answer to that
But
one.
Ty,
That's
I
all
think
yours,
you're the
Ty.
guy. I think Ty's the guy on that one.
Thank you, Congressman Price, for that question. We appreciate that. The answer is not quite yet. That's ultimately a collection and hauling, and like everything, it's a collection, hauling, and processing. There's an element of that if it's collected properly, which would be part of the whole composting operation that we want to do. But that's not quite there yet, and particularly if it's placed in a plastic bag. So generally, for the most part right now, it's going into landfill.
Sounds like an opportunity for an entrepreneur to create a disposable,
We're going to create a committee and put Deborah
Deb in
Price as the
Price, there you
chair of
go.
that, okay?
You get a lot of takers on that. Bill Lafayette wants to know, I know that these recycling initiatives have extended the useful life of the landfill, but what's the status now, and what are we thinking about, and when that will happen?
So I'll answer that since SWACO owns and operates a landfill. Nobody likes to talk about landfills and you know, kind of icky and everything, but we believe that our landfill, thank goodness that we have one in Franklin County to serve our needs, because even though everyone wants zero waste, you're still going to need a landfill. And we're also, we believe, fortunate that it's a publicly owned landfill. Your landfill, and because it is yours, it's a publicly owned landfill. A few years ago, we received a permit from Ohio EPA to extend the life of that landfill, to make it last longer, bigger capacity, so that now we can handle approximately 43 years of capacity. So we have a landfill long-term. And if we didn't have that landfill, and it would have to be trucked probably 50 miles away or whatever, you're going to pay for that in hauling cost. But also, it's more than just having a landfill. It's how we operate it. We are daily monitored by Ohio EPA and Franklin County Health and Ohio Department of Health. We have had no environmental or safety violations in nearly 10 years. We have had no increase in the fees that we charge, that you pay for to bring that waste down there, in nearly 10 years. In fact, we lowered the rate a few years ago, which is good. We are running we're running SWACO with basically essentially the same number of employees that we had 8 years ago. So your landfill is an efficient operation, it's safe, it's environmentally friendly, and it serves your needs. The biggest difference between a public landfill and a private landfill is we all operate under the same rules, but a private landfill makes their money by filling it up. That's how they make money for their stockholders. A public landfill, our goal is not to fill it up. Our goal is to make sure that it is available there as long as it can, and to recycle as much out of there as we can to preserve that. That's a difference, and that's why we have partnerships with all of our private entities and all of our haulers, and very good relationships. But there are advantages to having a public landfill in your community. There are advantages in our community of having this landfill here, particularly because it is a safe and well operated facility that serves your needs. We believe it's an asset.
So I'm told this is the last question. The pandemic has set back recycling. We stopped using our carryout bags at the grocery. There's tons and tons and tons of takeout containers from food places. What kinds of things is SWACO doing to get us back into the habit of recycling and to reduce the amount of plastic that we're using now?
I don't believe generally our game plan has changed. I mean, a lot of that still comes back to education, awareness, examples. So I don't think our game plan has changed. The waste stream during COVID changed tremendously. At the landfill, 60% of all the materials going to the landfill are commercially generated from businesses, from hospitals, from universities, schools. 40% is residential. During the height of the pandemic, that ratio inversed. So that you had a lot less commercial activity, so therefore you had a lot less commercial waste, but you had a tremendous spike in residential. Why? Because more people were home, and two, because everybody was cleaning out their garage and basements as a project, and the amount of waste coming down in pickup trucks and everything else was unbelievable. We're seeing that go back to more regular levels as business activity picks up. So for us, again, it's an opportunity to enhance, reinforce our education messages, our awareness, our practices, so that people will get back into the habit of recycling.
We had quite a few calls from residents for additional trash containers. And for those you pay, and we give an additional recycling bin for free. So for us, it was an opportunity to educate residents and say, well, we'll give you an extra recycling bin, and here's all the things you could be recycling. But we definitely saw quite the increase in trash coming from residents.
Okay. I hope you all found today's forum not just interesting, but a little inspirational in that it gets you thinking about maybe composting, maybe reusing things, and beginning to solve some of these waste problems that are here now and I think going to get worse in the future if we don't do something. Okay, everyone should be on board for next week's CMC as we explore passenger trains, Amtrak, and the recent news that their potential comeback here to Ohio. I want to thank our sponsors today, Kroger, the City of Hilliard, Falgren Mortine, and Cornucocosing. Thank you very much. Also, our partnership with the Emergency Response Fund of Columbus Foundation for presenting our live stream with the Columbus Dispatch and PNC. Thank you to our virtual seat patrons, too. We enjoy you, even though we don't get to see you out there. And special appreciation and thanks, of course, to our speakers. We could not do this without all of you. Ty Marsh, Michelle Crandon, Scott Barber, and Beth Berger. Thank you very much. See you all next week.